Good morning. We are excited to have all of you on the call today. Thank you for joining us for our Wine Country Speakers webinar. My name is Nancy Woltering, and I will be hosting the webinar today with program coordination by David Woltering and technical assistance from Mary Gatterud. We call ourselves Wine Country Speakers because many of us started the journey to improve our speaking skills while living in the heart of the wine country in Sonoma County. We're different from other speaking groups in several ways. First, we provide a forum for speeches of any length. So if people are invited to give a keynote or other type of speech, Wine Country Speakers provides a setting to practice and receive feedback. Second, as a speaking group, we provide and receive round-robin feedback, which is to say, feedback from each member of the group. So speakers have the benefit of a number of points of view. And third, so that we get a lot of practice, we establish a topic for each meeting for speakers to develop and receive feedback on 5-minute speeches. And we also include forums on a number of topics. We're an informal group. During the pandemic, we started to meet virtually and now have members living as far away as Canada and Hawaii. Today, we are sharing some tips and tools for enhancing our speaking skills that we have learned along the way. 7 members will be presenting 10 to 12-minute talks on different aspects of speaking that help elevate speakers' messages. Our 8th speaker, Dennis Mangan, will not be presenting today, but we will highlight some of the key points that we have learned from him over time. Through these speeches, we will share a variety of speeches on different topics. The common thread is using tools to improve our speaking skills. We will also have a few minutes for questions and answers following our prepared speeches. So please leave any questions that you have in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of them as possible after the prepared speeches. As David Woltering mentioned, the chat function has not been enabled, so please use the Q&A. So with that introduction, let's get started. Our first speaker today is Don Franceschi. Don spent 30 years working for State Fund, where he felt the quality of in-house speeches by teammates could be improved. He went on a mission to remedy the situation, first writing a book entitled From Awful to Awesome, 9 Essential Tools for Effective Presentations, and then a similar book focused on safety in the workplace, Speaking Safely Successfully. Today, Don will give a presentation entitled Bang the Beginning. Don will talk about why the beginning of a presentation is so important. He'll discuss how much time a speaker has to get the audience's attention, and he will share some of the techniques available to accomplish this. Please help me welcome Don Franceschi.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Beep, 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 beep. That was 7 seconds. 7 seconds. That's not very long, is it? Do you know studies have been done that say that you have 7 seconds to get your audience's attention at the beginning of a talk? 7 seconds. But do speakers utilize those 7 seconds effectively? I wondered that. So for a 2-week period for the state of California, I took note of how folks were starting their presentations, and I'm going to share a few of those with you. Well, I guess we should get started. I have news for the presenter. We've already started, and we're not starting with a bang, are we? I'm really not good at giving presentations. Well, based on that statement, you're right. You're not. Doesn't really inspire confidence in the speaker, does it? Here's one. Let's get this over with. Wow. And then one of my favorites, a boring announcement. Has everyone signed in? No, 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 no. I just said you have 7 seconds to get your audience's attention at the start of your talk. Don't waste it with those examples. Remember, when your audience walks in to your presentation, they are preoccupied. They're thinking about the text they need to look at, the phone calls they need to make, the emails they need to respond to, heck, maybe even the dry cleaning they need to pick up on the way home. They are preoccupied, and your job is to break their preoccupation in those first 7 seconds and get their attention. Break the preoccupation and get their attention in those first 7 seconds. Now, do we do that effectively? Well, you heard some of those examples. Not really. Now, I know you might be thinking, okay, Don, I get it. You should, really get the audience's attention at the beginning, but I have some boring announcements I have to make. I get it. I worked for the state of California, gave hundreds and hundreds of presentations. If you have to make a boring announcement at the beginning, break their preoccupation, get their attention, then step out of the presentation for just a second and give your boring announcements. Oh, has everyone signed in? Be sure to sign in, and the bathrooms are out the door to the right. And then pop back into the presentation while you still have their attention. Just don't make them the first words out of your mouth. So if those are just terrible ways to start a presentation, what are some better ways? Well, you know what? I have 7 tips for those first 7 seconds. And we've already done tip number 1. You can use a prop. Props can be a wonderful way to get your audience's attention at the beginning. If you have speaker anxiety, it takes the focus off of you as the presenter and puts it on the prop. It gives you something to do with your hands. And one suggestion, though, if you use a prop, you need to rehearse with it so you know how to operate or manipulate the prop. You don't want to try to figure it out during the presentation. I had another prop example here, too. I was discussing adult learning methods, and there were 5 of them. So I thought, okay, 5 of them. A hand. I thought of a hand. So I made up a big, huge hand. Can you guys all see that? And I had some fun with it. I told them, you know what? Role play, let's face it, everyone hates role play. That's why it's the middle finger. But you get the point. Using a prop is a wonderful way to get your audience's attention at the beginning of a talk. So that was the first one. What's another one? Well, you can use a vivid visual. If a prop is something that you hold or touch or handle, a vivid visual is usually something that you look at, a picture, especially important in PowerPoint presentations. For example, if you are going to talk about wildfires, and why start your presentation with a bunch of bullet points and all this verbiage on a PowerPoint slide about wildfires and number of acres burned, etc.? Why not try showing a vivid visual of an actual wildfire? Which is more impactful? So use vivid visuals to start your presentation, especially for a PowerPoint one. What's our next one? Oh, hey, you can tell a story. Just like the cute little girl there hearing a story. We are wired as humans for storytelling. When someone tells a story, we lean in. We really listen. And we remember the story long after we originally heard it. So telling a story is a wonderful way to break the audience's preoccupation in those first 7 seconds and get their attention. For some of my presentation skills classes, I often tell my first and worst presentation ever story. And that gets the audience's attention right off the bat. So don't be afraid to use a story. Now, a couple things. It needs to be germane to the topic, of course, and it needs to match the time slot. If you have an 11-minute time slot, for example, you can't spend 10 minutes of it telling a story, right? It's got to match. So keep the story short, and it'll be more impactful. Tell a story. Oh, here's another one. I've got another one. You can ask a question. For a lot of my presentation skills classes, I'll start with the question. Have you ever attended an awful presentation? And I'll ask folks to raise their hand, and pretty much everybody raises their hand. And then I'll do a follow-up question. Was that awful presentation your presentation? And then if they're honest, I see hands come back up. I know mine does. Asking a question is a great way to get audience engagement and get their attention right at the beginning. And you can combine these methods. For some of my presentation skills classes, I might start with that question and then dive into my first and worst presentation story right then. So you can combine these two. You don't have to do each one individually. You can combine them. Oh, here's one. You can use a quote. Now, I do suggest it's more interesting than this one. You want a quote that's interesting, unique, maybe even original. If you have an old, boring, cliched quote, then people are going to think your presentation is going to be old and boring and cliche too, and they'll tune you out. So make it interesting and original if you can, or at least unique. I had a presentation that I was giving, and what I did is I used a quote from my father, and he was a general contractor. And his quote was, "Destruction is easier than construction." In other words, it's easier to tear things down than to build things up. Another time, I had a short speaker anxiety poem that we read at the beginning. It was short. We read it line by line. It was a great icebreaker and it got people's attention. That would also fall in this category of a quote. So don't be afraid to use a quote. Here's one. Surprising statistic. I sat in one time with one of my folks who was speaking to a group about confined space safety. And he said, working in confined spaces is very dangerous. But you know what's more dangerous? And that's being a rescuer of someone in a confined space. Because 60% of confined space fatalities are to the would-be rescuer, not the person who is in the confined space to begin with. Sad statistic, right? And I've had some fun with it too, statistics. I started one presentation by saying 50% of Americans love statistics. 50% of Americans hate statistics. And guess what? 50% of Americans just don't understand statistics. So use a surprising statistic. And lastly, our seventh one is a shocking statement. I sat in on a motor vehicle safety presentation one time, and the instructor said, "Do you know that if a plane in the United States carrying 100 people crashed and all 100 people died, that would be front page news across the country?" It would. However, 100 people die every day in motor vehicle accidents, and nobody seems to listen and nobody seems to care. Pretty impactful, right? Kind of a depressing example here. So let's use a more upbeat example. You have 7 seconds to get your audience's attention at the start of a presentation. That would also work. All right, moving along. Let's do our quick recap of our 7 methods that we came up with. First one is use a prop. It's a wonderful way. It takes the focus off of you as the speaker, gives you something to do with your hands. If you have speaker anxiety, those two things are great. But be sure to rehearse with it so that you know how to operate it. Don't try to figure it out during the presentation. You could use a vivid visual, especially important if it's a PowerPoint presentation. Less words, more visuals. You could tell a story, but keep it short and it has to be germane to the topic. You can ask a question, wonderful way for get audience engagement. You can use a quote, state a surprising statistic, and open with a shocking statement. All those 7 tips are better ways than those first examples that I gave. And you have to remember, you need to use those 7 examples because, folks, the clock is ticking. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Don, for a powerful speech on banging the beginning. Now let's take a look at key takeaways from Don's speech. He provided a range of ways to bang the beginning by using a prop or visual aid, telling a story, or asking a question. Other ideas included starting a presentation with an interesting quote, a surprising statistic, or a shocking statement. Thank you, Don, for these helpful takeaways that we can experiment with and integrate into future speeches. Just a reminder for anybody who has questions for Don to please put them in the Q&A, and we will get to as many of the questions as we have time for after the prepared speeches. Our next speaker is Marie O'Neal. Marie is a dynamic coach, author, and speaker who conducts trainings virtually and all over the country. Marie is an expert in establishing her authority and credibility. She will share the subtle verbal and nonverbal cues that establish the credibility of a speaker as a trusted authority. She will share how credibility is earned in seconds and how you know how to project unshakable credibility. Marie will describe how to own your space, how to command with cadence, and how to shift from proving to serving, all of which will enhance your credibility as a speaker. Please help me welcome Marie O'Neal.
Thank you, Nancy. We definitely only have 7 seconds, as Dawn said. So let's see what I do with mine. You all are here because you have valuable ideas. You have expertise. You have a message that deserves to be heard. And you want your audience to trust that message, to see you as a well-informed source, and to genuinely listen when you speak up. Today, we're diving into how to do just that, projecting credibility and authority, even when you don't feel like it. Do you want your audience to trust your message, to see you as a well-informed source? This is the question, isn't it? We want our audience to lean in, to believe in what we're saying, to see us as a valuable source of information. The truth is, credibility is often earned in mere seconds. Those initial moments when you step on the stage, when you appear, when you first open your mouth, they set the stage. Think about it. Before you've even processed what someone is saying, you're already making a judgment about their confidence and their command of the subject. And the good news? You do not have to conquer every single doubt in your mind to appear credible and to communicate with authority. Today, I'm going to share some small but incredibly powerful tips in both your delivery and your mindset that will significantly boost how credible and self-assured you appear, ensuring your audience listens intently when you speak up. Let's start with the nonverbal. Your body speaks volumes before you ever utter a single word. It's the first impression, the silent introduction, and it impacts how your message is received. Tip 1, the power stance. Notice the profound difference in just how I'm presenting myself. A strong, open posture communicates confidence and presence. Compare it to someone who is slumped, shoulders rounded, perhaps even looking down. Which person would you instinctively trust more with valuable information? Even on Zoom, your posture is critical. If you're leaning back too far, slumped, or constantly fidgeting, your audience picks up on that subtle signal of unease or disinterest. Instead, sit or stand as if you are absolutely the most credible and prepared person in the room, because in that moment, for your topic, you are. It's not about being aggressive. It's about taking up the space that you deserve. conveying that you are present and in command. It's also about taking the focus off of you, the speaker, and using your body language to project confidence for your audience, letting them know that they are in capable hands. Now, let's talk about your voice and the language you use. These are incredibly subtle, yet incredibly impactful. They are the instrument through which your message truly comes alive. Tip 2, the self-assured voice. When I speak quickly and with a higher pitch, perhaps I sound a bit pushed or rushed or a little unsure or maybe even nervous. But when I intentionally slow down, allow my voice to settle into a slightly lower, more grounded register, I automatically sound more thoughtful, more intentional, and far more in control. Nerves often make us rush and elevate our pitch. It's a natural psychological response, but consciously slowing your pace forces you to take deeper breaths, allowing your voice to resonate more fully. This projects calm expertise. And don't underestimate the profound power of strategic pause or silence. After delivering a critical point, a moment of silence doesn't create an awkward gap. It creates space. It allows your audience to truly absorb what you've said, to let the information sink in, giving your words more weight and impact. It signals confidence, a speaker who trusts their message enough to let it hang in the air for a moment. Practice recording yourself. Listen to your pace, your pitch, and most importantly, where you can insert those powerful intentional silences. Tip 3, the weasel words. Yes, these are the little saboteurs of credibility. Words like, like, just, I think, maybe, they sneak into our sentences subtly, yet powerfully undermine our certainty. I just think that maybe you should consider this point, or for your next presentation versus consider this point for your next presentation. It will make a difference. See the striking difference? Weasel words soften your statements, making them sound less certain, less direct, less assured. They make you sound like you're still figuring out what you want to say, even when you know it cold. When you deliver a clear, concise statement without these verbal crutches, you project unwavering belief and conviction in what you're saying. This takes practice and heightened awareness. It means truly listening to yourself speak, or better yet, recording yourself and ruthlessly editing these words out. Replace I think with I believe, or simply state your point as fact. Your audience deserves your clear, confident message, unencumbered by unnecessary filters. Now, let's address the internal game. Because no matter how perfect your posture or polished your words, if your internal dialogue is focused solely on your fears or perceived shortcomings, it will eventually seep into your delivery. Credibility isn't just an external performance, it's also an internal alignment. Tip 4, the mindset shift. When you are nervous, what's your primary focus? Often, It's intensely on ourselves. How am I doing? Am I messing up? Do they like me? What if I forget something? This self-focus is a major fuel for performance anxiety and can amplify any internal doubt. It makes the stage feel like a judgment zone. Instead, before you speak, take a deliberate moment. Close your eyes if you can. Take a deep breath, deep calming breath, and ask yourself, what is the one most important thing I want my audience to walk away with today? What specific value, insight, or inspiration am I bringing to them? When you consciously shift your focus from, am I good enough, to what value can I bring, something incredible happens. Your nerves start to dissipate because your purpose becomes bigger than your fear. You're no longer performing, you're serving. You become a conduit for valuable information rather than just an individual standing on a stage. And that genuine desire to help, to inform, to inspire, that's the most authentic, unwavering source of communicating with self-assuredness that there is. It's about fundamentally shifting the spotlight from yourself to your audience's needs and benefits. When you serve, your confidence naturally elevates. To recap these powerful tips for projecting credibility and communicating with authority, even when you don't quite feel like it. Tip 1, the power stance. Take up your space, whether standing, sitting, or on video, projecting confidence for your audience. Tip 2, the self-assured voice. Slow down, lower your pitch slightly, breathe deeply, and strategically use the power of silence. Tip 3, eliminate weasel words. Speak with clarity, conviction, and directness. Tip 4, the mindset shift. Focus intently on the value you're delivering to your audience, not on your personal performance. Remember, projecting confidence doesn't mean you're faking it until you make it. It means you're acting as if until your internal confidence catches up. You're giving your brain and body the positive cues that reinforce the expert that you truly are. It's about amplifying the expert you already are within. You don't have to feel 100% confident to look and sound 100% confident. These are skills you practice and build. These aren't just soft skills. They are foundational, high-impact tools for elevating your influence. Whether you're a new manager presenting to your team, a business owner pitching an idea, or simply someone with a powerful message they want to share. By implementing these tips, you empower yourself to speak up, to stand out, and to truly elevate your influence. I hope these insights empower all influential speakers to take the stage, virtual or otherwise, with renewed purpose, presence, and profound impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie, for going behind the scenes to show us how to enhance our credibility as speakers. Now let's take a look at Marie's takeaways. She talked about how to calm internal nerves and address imposter syndrome, which can sabotage your message. She's clear that credibility is a skill that you can learn and project. She described how shifts in your delivery and mindset can make you more trustworthy and enhance credibility, and how to assure that your audience listens intently when you speak. Thank you, Marie, for a very compelling speech. And just a reminder for anybody who has questions for Marie to please put them in the Q&A. Our next speaker is Tony Navarra. Tony is an expert in authentic salesmanship and persuasive communication, bringing exuberance, excitement, and enthusiasm to everything he does. Tony will present a powerful talk on saying the right thing at the right time, the right way, every time. Tony will talk about the hidden architecture that shapes every conversation you have ever had. He will discuss conversational moves that help you avoid awkward rejections and misunderstandings. And he will share powerful techniques to repair and redirect conversations when they've gone off track. Please help me welcome Tony Navarra.
Thank you, Nancy, for that wonderful introduction. I am so excited about being here today. I am going to use one of Dawn's techniques to start this talk, and that is, who here has had an awkward conversation? And I bet most people have. Because conversation is something that we've been doing ever since we learned how to talk. It's a cooperative action, and sometimes they go off the rails. There's all these rules about conversation. They're unspoken. And even if we do know what the rules are subconsciously, we don't necessarily have names for them. But once you understand those rules, once you can follow them, but more importantly, you know how to bend them, perhaps even break them, then things are going to change for you. You're going to really understand how the conversation goes between two people. And just to clear up one thing before we get too far into this, a conversation is the same thing as a presentation, only more up close and personal, because you've only got one person that you're talking to. Now, to build on what Marie has talked to us about, I'm going to share with us 3 tips today, 3 rules, 3 concepts that you can use in the very next conversation that you have. This could be a conversation in everyday life. It could be with a boyfriend, girlfriend. It could be with a barista down the road. It could be in a business situation. Anytime that you are in conversation with one or more people, this is going to come in handy for you. And once you learn these concepts, everything's going to change for you. Every day, in every conversation, we do these 3 plus many other things. But these are the 3 we're going to focus on today. First one is adjacency pairs. This is the DNA of every conversation. This is the give and take that we have come to expect. Conversational repair. What do we do when conversations go off track? How do we prevent them from becoming awkward? And once they do become awkward, how do we bring them back into focus? And then, of course, the powerful technique of pre-sequences, which is how do we set the stage for what we're about to say? Now, I can hear some of you out there, you're probably going, what the heck's all that? So let's dive into each one. Let's give some real examples here. Let's look at this conversation. Good morning. How are you? I'm doing well, thanks. How are you? We've done this hundreds, thousands of times, right? You've done this many, many times. And this is how you would expect this conversation to go. Let's look at another example here. Good morning. How are you? The fish is freshest on Tuesday. It's almost like a spy code or something. A little awkward silence. And then, are you okay? Because, are you okay? This conversation didn't go the way you would expect. Now, the second example, how does that make you feel? A little awkward, a little on edge, a little uncomfortable, maybe things weren't going the way you expected. This is the start of an awkward conversation. An adjacency pair is an action and a response. We engage in them every single conversation. When somebody says thank you, it's almost an automatic response to say you're welcome. It just pops out because that's what's socially expected. When you ask a question like, do you want to go to dinner on Friday? You're going to get one of three responses. Yes, no, maybe. You rarely hear someone say, it's cold on Tuesday, because that's not the expected response to a direct question like that. These adjacency pairs are most of any conversation that you have with someone. And you can use them to your benefit, especially in a sales conversation or when you need to ask for something. They allow you to guide the conversation, set expectations from the other person. So let's talk about conversational repair. Conversations, they go off the rails all the time. Okay, remember that awkward example? You said, hello, how are you? And the person said something about fish on Tuesday. Every conversation has moments like these when things go wrong. There's mishearings, misunderstandings, someone says something inappropriate, and this is where the repair mechanisms save us. Now, there are two types of repair mechanisms. There's a self-repair, when somebody repairs it, makes the misstatement and repairs it, and then there's other repair, and that is when the other person repairs it for you. You catch yourself on self-repair and you say, actually, I meant to say was. Other repair is when someone else fixes it. I think what you meant was Thursday, not Tuesday. As people, we prefer self-repair. That's why when someone makes a mistake, we often pause a little bit and wait for them to catch it and correct it themselves. It's sort of a face-saving social cooperation at its finest. It's part of that dance that we do with each other as in conversation. Now, I've had this happen to me. I know you've had this happen to you. You make a misstatement, you just keep on going, the other person just jumps in and they say, oh, no, you meant Thursday, not Tuesday. And it happens often enough, and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is like jumping on me all the time. So the preference is for self-repair. We need to give people time to catch their own mistakes and to correct them. In sales, when a client objects or misunderstands, instead of just like correcting them, you can use soft repairs. I may not have explained that clearly. What I meant was, and this helps you maintain the rapport, and it helps reduce the misunderstandings. In personal relationships, repair mechanisms are relationship savers. When I said that, it came out wrong. What I really meant was, those 9 words have probably saved more relationships than any other words in the English language. So when you're engaging in conversational repair, give the other person an opportunity to correct themselves before you jump in. It helps them save face, and it keeps the conversation flowing smoothly. Pre-sequences. Now, this sets the stage for success. And now, have you ever heard of pre-sequences before? They are the questions that you ask before you ask the real question. Did I ever tell you about my trip to Alaska? What are you doing this weekend? Do you have a minute? These are questions you ask beforehand to set the stage. Did I ever tell you about my trip to Alaska? Now, if I did tell you about it before, I certainly don't want to bore you. But if I didn't, let me tell you about this fish I caught. What are you doing this weekend? Now, this could be a setup for, hey, you want to go out on a date Saturday night? Or do you want to come over and help me move? Do you have a minute? Well, do you? In the business world, I have important news about this project. That's pre-sequence where you're setting people's expectations. You're not just dropping something in on them. Pre-sequences help you avoid the awkward rejections, the awkward conversations, and they give everyone kind of an out before the real action begins. So let's pull this all together. You have adjacency pairs. These are two things that almost always go together. Question, answer, call and response. These are things that go together in conversations that we just sort of intuitively know by this point in our life, but you may not have a name for. Conversational repair. Soft repairs, self-repair, other repair. How do you repair the conversation so that you can continue to participate in this cooperative activity? And pre-sequences, setting the stage for asking the question. And most people, they know these rules unconsciously. You probably do, but now you know them consciously. You'll know when to follow them, when to bend them, when to break them. You'll know when other people make mistakes, how to correct them in ways that could help you save face. Now that you know the rules, everything begins to change. Imagine the looks you'll get, the responses from bosses, colleagues, customers, loved ones, as you're the one to reassure them, to comfort them, to connect with them. Your world is going to change. The people most important to you are going to change. You're changing. And all the good things you want in life will flow to you as a result of having learned to say the right thing at the right time, the right way, every time. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for a really insightful presentation. Now let's take a minute to take a look at Tony's takeaways. Tony discussed how adjacency pairs create obligations and expectations in everyday exchanges. He talked about when and how to use pre-sequences, a new word for many of us, to test the waters before making requests. And he explained the difference between self-repair and other repair and why timing matters in conversational recovery. Again, thank you, Tony. And please put any questions that you have for Tony in the Q&A. Our next speaker is Sue Minahan. Sue is an expert in helping people connect with their authentic voice and purpose, and is the host and founder of a radio show entitled Talk Cosmos. Sue will present a powerful talk on the emotional compass, finding your voice to shine your light. She will provide tools for connecting with your emotional core. She will discuss how your values shape your voice and explain why your voice has a unique impact. Please help me welcome Sue Minahan.
Hi, I'm glad you're here. This speech of mine today will focus on you creating powerful speeches that resonate with your audience by finding core values, igniting your heart and mind. It's when you understand your feelings, when you're attached to your values, your voice shines. It inspires wonder, fear, joy, passion. Whatever's courageously involved with your vision, you empower change. I'm going to demonstrate 3 tips, including a few techniques that focus your ideas to bring together your heart, mind, and understand deeply these core values within yourself. First, the mind and heart. Second, identifying core values. And third, giving 3 technique exercises to align both your mind and heart values, those forces that activate your creative flow. You will notice perhaps online that there are tools to visualize relationships between concepts, plan strategies, effectively organizing your thoughts. However, the goal is linking that compassionate heart to the intellectual head. It aligns those core values so that you really shine your light. Let's do tip number 1, the heart-mind emotional compass. And I'll expand just a moment on the physical emotional existence of it. In 1991, Dr. Amor discovered hearts have more nerves attached to it than brains. There's actually 40,000 neurons. The heart's vagus nerves, it synthesizes every verbal or nonverbal thought, pain, joy. It's felt in your body, it goes right to your brain. Truly, it's psychosomatic brain-body connection where your emotions, they create this weather vane inside, integrating thoughts, conscious or not, and they're streaming into the body. The key here is to clear up your mixed messages, because whatever unity is between your heart and your mind that's regulating this emotional compass, impacting your message, your heart is seeking, let's know my emotional why, because it's really feelings that navigate your truthful motives. It's like a catalyst that connect your mental companion with your feelings. It's actually defining your emotional why that transcends motivating your beliefs. To get to that emotional, intentional meaningfulness. Now for tip number 2, knowing your core values. Because sharing your convictions with clarity, not just reciting information, that's where you speak with authority. 2 examples that are memorable one-liners. They illustrate passionate values about a meaningful idea of home. However, they're spoken with different tones. The first is forever etched in my childhood memory, said by Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. There's no place like home. It signifies the meaning of home by its value, essential emotional warmth, embodied by comfort, safety, by caring family relationships. It's based on supportive love. The second lasting phrase is much longer ago, leading up to the U.S. Revolutionary War, and it's spoken by founding father Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. It impacts a very contrasting meaning of home by the essential value of choosing independence to protect his homeland's freedom. Navigating your emotional compass takes courageous commitment, finding what sails your kite. However, the question really remains, what values interpret what we prioritize? Attached to what mission, your purpose, steering your value system? To find this emotional compass, because those values we pull from this proverbial lever creates a whole spectrum we engage in. It directs the decisions, choosing the words, the attitudes, the aligned motives we use. I'll demonstrate 3 techniques. These interacting tools will help in connecting your unity between that mind and heart, breaks open, materializes the feelings, bringing those mental ideas into consciousness. First technique exercise will open creativity because it releases that consequential thinking. It fleshes out ideas, releases constraints one might be feeling, involving judgment, and opens up, therefore, creativity. Make a circle, either on paper or on your online Blackboard tablet. This circle, it represents your emotional compass. And inside it, write a focused word, a phrase, a subject that is involved with your headspace, your heart, whatever comes to mind at that moment that's really the focus. and spontaneously start writing words, emotions, those feelings, ideas. It could be anything. And forget, please, your ego that might suggest that they have a purpose or a reason, that one might be an emotion or one might be an idea. No matter. Just if it's fearful, helpful, and they seem to conflict, they can coexist. They're motivating emotions. So the idea is that radiating out around your circle, you start writing these words or stack them. The option, just going out like one thread. This word, that word is associating, and then create a new ray. However it works, and stop when it's over. Because this exercise, it blasts off your careful monitoring, that aspect of our personality that desires control, perhaps of exterior standards, might be competitive or judgmental or fearful, anticipating that you'll lose some reference or standard of your own thinking because you're not being right. But despite these negativities, the process, it opens up and frees that which has been halted, because writing freely associated words without any judgment, or whether even it makes sense, it acknowledges that centerpiece word that you've been contemplating on and opens up more association with it. So for the second tool, this focus recognizes on the larger picture of what you're experiencing, because you're going to become aware of your feelings and ideas. And this purpose evaluates ideas that might be just idly roaming around in your head and perhaps interfering with the thought process of why you're understanding something or even making decisions. So again, on a piece of paper or on your tablet, draw a line right down the middle, and at the top, a horizontal one, because on one side, you're going to label that as benefits or perhaps advantages. And on the other side, you're going to label that as difficult or disadvantages. And in each appropriate column, your feelings, reasons, desires, challenges, anything at all involved with this particular endeavor that you're involved with, write down what supports you, write down what blocks you until you've said it all. Then you're going to observe this list that you've created and notice if there's duplicates. You could circle those. Notice if one negates or opposes one. You could draw a line connecting them or cross them off if they just seem to, wash each other out. And if they are supporting each other or replicating, you could put those together. And notice also what came from your heart, what came from your head. Let's go to the third exercise, because this discovers and discerns what values are really influencing you. Again, get a fresh piece of paper or your tablet, and this time just freely, without any regard to any purpose of any endeavor, just write those values that are really important to you. And then review them and start choosing two that might be similar. It could be joy and happiness. It could be fear and distress, whatever they are. Not that fear and distress are really your values, but perhaps you might find some building block from that. I don't know. This is your, whatever it is, it's optionally open. And the point being, choose which one is stronger to you so that you distill this list to perhaps about 10 different core values, because these will answer and synchronize your heart and mind. Are you wondering what's the purpose to know our values? Remember, in essence, our wires and our feelings are wired together. They dictate how we speak and connect. That's why the stories that are told that bring up so many valuable ideas as far as one of the techniques of how to get your attention. Because what we care about, it will involve both your heart and mind. It creates those values It fuels our causes, directs our choices, our attitudes, the words that we express, our voice. Because values, they make the ingredients of our soul. And when you align your heart's path to your values, we resonate. Your voice, it matters. It's like a ripple. Your words pulse out. And when you trust that your interest creates a function, it will for you and others. People will respond to heartfelt convictions. Aligning emotions with words, it transforms like a beacon of light, illuminating your path, because that's when we inspire change. This quote, "Follow your heart, but take your brain with you," it's Alfred Adler, 1900s, at the turn of the last century. He developed individual psychology. It takes courage to find those values, to navigate your ship, propel your mission, your purpose. But finding and discovering your emotional compass, it creates powerhouse talks. It's your internal GPS launching light into your message. It's the emotional why. It drives you, dictates your stream of consciousness, making choices between priorities. Finding values evokes your truth. So let's connect that emotional why with your thoughts. Recognize what ignites your inner spark. Meld your feelings with your thoughts. Get memorable messages. Using these action tools, using the circle with the thought inside, spiraling it around. Use the 2 columns, benefits versus disadvantages. And lastly, all your values to compare. It's very amazing. It's a hard decision sometimes coming up with 2 that seem to work, but when you really think and focus, you can drive it down. This engages your emotional compass, where your passion, values are connecting your soul, unifying that heart and mind into a laser, impacting hearts with the power to uplift, motivate, and guide others by shining your voice's light. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue, for a very illuminating speech. Now let's take a look at Sue's takeaways. She showed us that the courage to speak your truth moves hearts, that your values are the light that illuminates your message, and your unique voice matters and makes a difference. Again, thank you, Sue, and please put any questions you may have for Sue in the Q&A. As I mentioned at the opening of the webinar, one of our members, Dennis Mangan, is not available to present today, but I'd like to tell you a little bit about Dennis, and then Don Franceschi will talk about some of the key messages that he has shared with us over time. Dennis Mangan has long been interested in science, scientists, and stories. He earned a PhD in medical microbiology at West Virginia University, and then studied cellular immunology as a postdoctoral scholar at the University of Michigan. Dennis spent most of his career as a program officer and senior advisor at the United States National Institutes of Health. Through this work, he developed a passion to improve the way science is communicated orally. After working at the NIH, he went on to develop the Chalk Talk Science Project, where he teaches how to bring science to life through storytelling and advocates for research storytelling to be formally taught to all early stage investigators. Through Chalk Talk Science program, Dennis works to increase awareness of the importance of scientific discoveries by helping researchers tell their stories to diverse audiences, including university, corporate leaders, students, colleagues, news media, policymakers, and the wider public. At this time, please help me welcome Don Franceschi, who will share some of Dennis Mangan's ideas on making the complex simple.
Thank you, Nancy. So I'll be sharing what Dennis was going to be going over today, a little summary. So let me start, and excuse these because I can't see without them. Here. There are many fields that involve complex ideas, systems, and terminology that can be hard to explain. Some of these fields include law, finance and economics, technology and IT, government and public policy, and Dennis's specialty, science. Science is complex and often hard to explain. Yet it is critical that scientists tell us about what they do and who they are, because a failure to talk to the people who support science through tax dollars or donations is an awful mistake. This failure to explain science in a meaningful way is not only bad for the entire field of science, but it also enables anti-science rhetoric to dominate the conversations. To strengthen the bridges between science and society, we've got to communicate better. Becoming a better storyteller is one way to help build those connections with all types of audiences. Storytelling is a powerful tool to explain complex information in ways that any audience can understand and remember. When data, technical information, or abstract concepts are presented through stories, they become easier to understand, remember, and emotionally connect with. This is because stories tap into how the human brain naturally processes and retains information through narrative, context, and emotion. Stories that are memorable have 4 essential elements: characters, action, tension, and emotion. CATE. Kate, it's an acronym. Characters with their internal and external dialogue can give a personal point of view that audiences can relate to. Action within the story can invoke emotions such as suspense, excitement, or awe, which can make the story more emotionally resonant. Tension is crucial for stories because it creates anticipation, drives the plot forward, generates a sense of urgency, and keeps the audience engaged. Finally, emotion plays a significant role in how people perceive and connect with information and can be beneficial for audience engagement, connection to the speaker or topic, memory retention, and persuasion. To summarize, storytelling is one of the best ways to make complex issues simple. Back to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Don, for a great summary of Dennis's ideas. Now let's take a look at the takeaways that Don has shared. That storytelling is an effective way to communicate complex information in ways the audience can understand and remember. Stories tap into how the brain naturally processes and retains information through narrative, context, and emotion. Stories that are memorable have 4 essential elements: characters, action, tension, and emotion. As Don mentioned, Dennis used the acronym of KATE to remember these elements, and we hope you do too, to enhance your communication of complex information through storytelling and its essential elements. Thank you, Don, for sharing some of Dennis's key ideas, and please put any questions you have about these ideas into the Q&A. Our next speaker is Leslie Neal. Leslie is an expert in mindset transformation and overcoming speaking anxiety using tools like the Emotional Freedom Technique, or EFT, to help speakers experience breakthrough results. Leslie will present her talk entitled, Tap into Your Power, Get from Where You Are to Where You Want to Be. Leslie will show how opening with an attention-grabbing statement can get your audience's attention, how stories can illustrate and reinforce your points, and how using a demonstration can enhance your message. Please help me welcome Leslie Neal.
Thank you, Nancy. I am not a mountain climber. For those of you who have never seen me in person, I'm 5 feet tall. I weigh about 89 pounds on a fat day, and I'm pushing 79 years old. I do not climb physical mountains. However, I do know a little about climbing mountains. Several years ago, I came across a National Geographic map of Mount Everest. Showed all the trails and the various ways you could go. I was surprised, actually shocked, to find out there were no less than 19 different trails or combinations of trails that take you to the top of the highest mountain on the planet. 19! I was expecting 3 or 4, 5 or 6 maybe, but 19 different ways to get to the top of the mountain. Well, that's really interesting, Leslie. But what does this have to do with you? Let me ask you this. Maybe I'm the only one in the room here that's ever had challenges that felt like Mount Everest, or at least a big mountain or a major bump in the road. Has that happened to you? Have you felt that way? When you're climbing Mount Everest, there's gear that you need to take with you. Picks and shovels and tents and spikes and maybe oxygen to get to the top. If you're climbing mountains in your life, there's also tools that can help you get to where you want to go. Help you get from where you are to where you want to be. And these tools are very, very useful. There's hundreds of them. You've probably already used many of these tools, such as affirmations, visualizations, setting goals, meditation, yoga, walking in nature to help calm you down, reading, spiritual practices, law of attraction, and maybe having fun. Now that's one that's highly underrated. Oh, I just thought of something. This happened to me years ago. I was in LA and I met a young man who was in sales and told me about how he was making a lot of sales. About 10 years later, I met a woman who was more senior, and she also was in sales, different type of sales, and she shared how she was making a lot of sales. Both of these people, totally different, had swimming pools where they lived. They both told me almost word for word, the more time I spend in the pool, the more money I make. In other words, they were enjoying their life, and that translated into their business. So that can be a tool also. Just having fun, like walking in the woods or wherever you like to be. I like to choose tools for myself that are quick, easy, fun to do, and they work. They're highly effective. My favorite tool happens to be called tapping. Tapping. No, not tap dancing. That's another thing. Tapping as in tapping on various parts of your body. The actual name is called Emotional Freedom Technique, or EFT. It is easy to learn, easy to use, it's enjoyable, and it works. That's the bottom line, is it works. With all the tools that we have to choose from, actually, they're kind of like a buffet. There's so many different tools to choose from. And you look at all the food on the buffet and you pick what you like and what you enjoy eating, because there's too many foods on the buffet to eat them all. And you don't want to eat them all. So you take what you want and leave the rest for others. And in choosing tools, that's what I do too. So I picked tapping for very specific reasons, in that I like to do it. It's effective, it's fun, and it works. That's the big difference. For me, anyway. I don't want to mess around or waste time on things that don't work. Let me give you a little demo on what this looks like. It's a bit unusual, but again, it's highly effective. And this is not what I'm going to show you is not how to tap. You can't take this demo and go do the tapping. This is just a brief experience of what it would be like. So if you're following along with me, I'd like you to follow along with me and tap on the parts of your body, and I'll go through them. And you can say the words I'm using or think something else. And because we're all speakers here, most of us, we're going to use reducing the fear of speaking through tapping. And this is only one of many, many ways it can be used. So tapping on the side of your hand, which is sometimes called the karate chop, because it's where they take and up and break the boards. So on the karate chop, you just simply say, I have this fear of speaking, while you're gently tapping there. I have this fear of speaking. Top of the head. I have this fear of speaking, and I really don't like it. It's a big inconvenience. Next is the eyebrows, the point of the eyebrow, right where the hair starts. And if you've got one that goes all the way across, it's right above the points of the eyes. I have this fear of speaking. I really don't like it. Side of the eye, that bone that goes around just for the side. I have this fear of speaking. I really want to get rid of this fear of speaking. It's a pain in the butt. I don't like it. Under the eye, I have this fear of speaking. I think I'm ready to release this fear because I don't want it anymore. Under the nose, I have this fear of speaking, but I heard the tapping can get rid of it. I'm not too sure about that. Under your lip, on the chin, I have this fear of speaking. I'm thinking maybe I'm going to give this a try because I'm feeling a little bit less afraid. Collarbone. Your collarbone goes across here, just underneath the collarbone, right there. And I have this fear of speaking, but I'm not feeling quite as bad about it. And under your arm, like this. You look like a monkey doing it. I have this fear of speaking, but I'm beginning to feel some relief. And lastly, the wrist of your hand. I have this fear of speaking, but I'm thinking it's starting to go away. So that just gives you a sense of what this is about. If you want to know more about this, I usually teach this with my coaching clients when I'm speaking, when I'm coaching people on speaking. I use this as a tool to use to help them become a better speaker. You can also go on YouTube and see hundreds of different ways. I mean, there's got to be thousands of videos on YouTube about EFT tapping. You can just put in EFT tapping and you'll get a whole plethora of videos. Most of them are pretty good. Some of them maybe not. But that is a way that you can use. It's a tool that you can use to get you from where you are to where you want to go and where you want to be, and get you over the bumps in the roads or the mountains, the challenges that feel like mountains. Remember, you can use tapping not only to get rid of fears, but to enhance positive things. You've heard a lot of suggestions today and ways to, tips and techniques to become a better speaker. You can use tapping to embed those techniques and tools, the ones you want to use, embed them in you, as well as getting rid of fears. I like it because there's no cost to it. It's easy to learn. Takes 5-10 minutes to actually learn it. It's so effective. Actually, I have a friend who was an excellent speaker, and she could do long speeches, short speeches, whatever. She was great. I loved to hear her talk. I found out that she had a fear of impromptu speaking. And I was like, really? All the speaking you do and you don't like impromptu speaking? Okay. You know about that tapping stuff, don't you? Yeah. Have you tried it? No, I haven't. Well, let's do that. And we did a tapping session, a very short one, on her fear of impromptu speaking. And after 2 short sessions with that, she no longer feared impromptu speaking. And I heard her doing impromptu speaking later. No problem at all. So that's just one example of how effective this is. Some problems take a little more longer than 2 sessions. Sometimes they go away right away. But it is highly effective, easy to learn, highly effective, enjoyable, no cost because you do it for yourself. Come on. This is why I like tapping. This is why I teach it. Remember, if you don't use the things that you learn, they kind of float away. So I encourage you to pursue this a little further to the point where you can decide, is this something that you really like? Is it one of the tools on the buffet that you want to use? Or is it just something that's to have and you have other tools to choose from? Select your tools carefully because they are the things that will get you or not from where you are to where you want to go. Thank you for attending our webinar.
Thank you, Leslie, for sharing your convictions about the usefulness of tapping. Now let's take a look at Leslie's takeaways. She encourages us to use examples and stories that are relatable to your specific audience. She indicates that using specific language can keep your audience's attention, and that an actual demonstration can be a powerful way to communicate your message. Again, thank you, Leslie. And please put any questions you may have for Leslie into the Q&A. Our next speaker is Jennifer Ng. Jennifer is an expert at using humor and personal anecdotes to create powerful connections with her audience. Today, Jennifer will talk about looking at our own lives for anecdotes that provide safety and laughter for our audiences. Anecdotes that will be remembered long after the speech is done. Please help me welcome Jennifer Ng for a speech entitled Finding Humor, the Power of Personal Anecdotes.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm Jennifer, and as I'm now well into adulthood, I feel like I've got a pretty good sense of the world, how it works, and society, particularly how society may often view me as an East Asian woman. Recently, I joined a new workplace. After my introduction through email, I arrive on site and I'm quickly greeted, "Hi, Maggie." Oops, sorry, she's wearing the same color top as you. Later, I learn Maggie is also East Asian. My name is Jen. Not the first time I've experienced this. No matter how different, how big, small, taller, hairstyle, glasses, no glasses, demeanor, eventually my knees get mixed up. I'm Cantonese, not Vietnamese, not Japanese, nor Nepalese. This has happened to me more times than I can count over the years, and now I play a little waiting game to see how long until these mix-ups start. Sometimes even my counterpart will share with me that recently they've just been called Jen, and then we get a little chuckle. Ultimately, it doesn't matter how familiar people are with me or my counterparts, eventually at some point, these kind of mix-ups happen, even in my closest circle of friends. And I'm okay with that because they know that I know they know who I am. Diversity and representation of different cultures and ethnicities is a wonderful thing. So I think it's great that I'm not the only East Asian person in my circle of colleagues or friends. And I think today, over the past 40 years, we've seen a great increase in the representation of East Asian representation in the media, in the news, in TV, even in the ballet advertisements. When I was growing up, basically I had famous Korean comedian and actor Margaret Cho, actor Sandra Oh, and then a decade later in the 2000s, Lucy Liu. Today, the list has grown to include many others like Ali Wong and Awkwafina. Even in the arts that are considered classics with historical settings, these works have included to expand modern, diverse casts. Take the Bridgerton show, for example, even with Shakespeare. This past summer, I was at a modern rendition of Shakespeare in the Park. I walk with my good friend who's Caucasian, her dog. We bring our picnic basket with snacks and a blanket, and we arrive to see many others seated with their blankets spread out in front of the set that required a certain suspended disbelief. Basically, a large sheet hung across a line between two large mature trees. It was a quintessential summer night. We spread our blankets under a shady spot and enjoy the nice evening breeze. The play opens with harpsichord music. And later, after the scene featuring Macbeth, the character leaves and shortly comes back, but this time as the nemesis, Duncan. Impressed, I turn to my friend and I say, "Oh my gosh, so like the main character, the actor Macbeth, is doing two major roles. He's Duncan." She turns and replies in a whispered exclamation, "Jen, it's a different actor. You know, not all Asians look alike." So in this preparation for this talk, I knew I wanted to tell some personal anecdotes that were infused with humor. And I love watching comedy. And even comedians will tell you that humor is a skill and it can, and I repeat, it can be practiced It can be analyzed, and with practice and delivery, it can be developed. Jerry Seinfeld uses his example that he calls "don't break the chain." What he basically says is for each day he practices his comedy writing and delivery, he makes an X on that day of the calendar. He practices his comedic writing every day so that he creates a chain of X's throughout the calendar, never breaking that chain. Practice the humor of the writing of humor regularly and often. Find some comedians that you like and study their humor. Consider taking a comedy class. Anecdotes are a sense of storytelling that quickly captures the attention of your audience. Now, when it's self-deprecating humor, I believe you're forming a deeper personal connection because you're allowing the audience to feel comfortable with you, giving them permission to feel safe, to laugh at you, because you're also laughing at yourself. Now, initially, this may not feel or be so easy. It may take a little bit of adjustment to get out of your comfort zone. And to help you with this, I suggest attending a drop-in improv class. I also recommend keeping a journal or diary of such moments that you can always revisit. As much as they may feel mortifying at the time, at some point in time, hopefully you can capitalize on them by incorporating them into a self-deprecating, humorous anecdote that relates and underscores the overall message of your talk. I think for giving a speech, finding a funny, self-deprecating anecdote not only gives the audience opportunity to laugh at you, but that this laughter creates endorphins well generated while receiving your message. Good times are memorable, so consider giving the audience a good time so they'll remember you, your anecdote that's related to the message of your talk, and ultimately your message. I'm going to wrap up my talk with a final anecdote, hoping you'll get a good chuckle out of our time together. It was the night before a train ride trip out of the city. I was at an old pub, and when I went to the restroom, looking for the cue of which gender washroom to go into, I froze. What happened to the stick figure signs for washrooms? To the left of the door, I see an apple, and then to the right, I see a pear. Which one means which? Am I the apple or am I the pear? I quickly toss it to chance and I go right, and I'm confronted with the sea of urinals, thankfully empty. I do a 180 and beeline out of there straight into the apple. I'm sure my face was flushed red as that red apple sign. The next day, I'm on the train, and like the evening before, I need to use a restroom. This time, when I find the washroom, I'm relieved. It's a universal design, gender neutral. So there's no like apple pear business. The stall is spacious, triple the typical size, and the door slides, similar to the kind on the airplane, but a lot larger. I feel like I'm in a giant luxury powder room, over 10 feet from the door to the throne. After relieving my bladder, I suddenly notice that the top toilet paper roll is empty, and the bottom roll, which is very low, just an inch or two above the ground at the level of my ankles, is completely encased in a clear, curved plastic cover. I fumbled to access that thing with what felt like forever, unsuccessfully. I'm forced to finally stand up with my pants still around my ankles. I take a couple of steps forward, turn around, and completely bend over to access this roll that's pretty much right above the ground. When I hear a click and feel a strange breeze that caused me to quickly turn and twist my neck, and at that point, I see a shadow retreat and see the door slide close. Turns out that door didn't automatically lock. The lock was the size of a tiny little tick-tock hidden right underneath the latch of the door. Who's going to notice that? Obviously not me. Mortified, I quickly fumbled to release that toilet paper encased like a prized jewel, got out of there, but this time I held my head high as the view that that person got was definitely not my face. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for an amusing and memorable speech. Now let's take a look at Jennifer's takeaways. She shared with us that self-deprecation usually gives the audience permission to laugh. She encourages us to use or to record personal anecdotes as a way to identify them in our lives. She notes that humor can be developed with practice and therefore encourages us to get out of our comfort zones, have fun, and be remembered. Again, thank you, Jennifer. And please put any questions you may have for Jennifer in the Q&A. Our next and final speaker is David Woltering. David is a city planner and community development director by training. He also has a strong interest and background in leadership and political science. Today, he will be talking to us about the importance of having a strong call to action in a speech. Rather than discussing the components of a strong call to action, David will use his talk to demonstrate a strong, clear, and concise call to action. He will show how evidence and stories help support a call to action, and he will demonstrate how passion for a call to action is critical to make it resonate with the audience. Please help me welcome David Woltering.
Nancy, thank you very much for the nice introduction. And good morning to our attendees, and thank you for coming to Wine Country Speakers. My talk today is about leadership and why particular leadership attributes matter. With my talk, I'm going to build upon and incorporate many of the tips and tools you've heard from other speakers today. But additionally, I'm going to focus on a strong call to action and the importance of delivering a strong call to action. Again, my topic is leadership. What do you look for in a leader? Whether for a social club, a civic organization, or at the state or national level, what leadership attributes and qualities do you believe to be important? I think we can all agree that leadership does matter. Our leaders affect our daily lives, and their selection is critically important. Leaders determine or help to determine organizational policy direction. They oversee policies and programs and how they're implemented. And very importantly, leaders model their leadership attributes and qualities for all. This modeling aspect of the role is not to be underestimated because it often establishes the culture of the organization or group involved. There are many leadership attributes that people find to be important. Some of those include the following: intelligence, drive, resilience, courage, verbal and written skills, sense of service, being able to connect emotionally, inspiration, vision, empathy, interpersonal skills, being an active listener, and moral character, doing the right thing when no one is watching. These leadership attributes can certainly be used in many beneficial ways. However, many can be used otherwise in ways that are not so beneficial and can even be adverse to an organization's core purposes, values, and principles. For example, a leader can be driven and can connect emotionally, but his or her actions can be contrary to an organization's core purposes, values, and principles. Consequently, it is extremely important that those responsible for selecting a leader clearly understand and support their organization's core purposes, values, and principles, and select a leader who will ensure that these will be protected, supported, and forwarded. And it is also important for the prospective leader to understand and support the organization's core purposes, values, and principles, and that he or she has demonstrated a strong moral character by acting in an honest and fair-minded manner in previous situations, shown courage by standing up to adversity to do the right thing, is an active listener, hearing and understanding the concerns of other people, and in addition, can connect emotionally with others to achieve support and forward a group's core purposes and underlying values and principles. A leader, given his or her authority, power, and influence, can build upon and further the purposes, values, and principles of an organization or society, or upend them entirely. With leadership, there is significant responsibility in why I believe the core leadership attributes of strong moral character, courage to do the right thing, active listening, and the ability to connect emotionally are so very critical. When thinking about our country, the United States of America, there is no leadership position more important than our presidency. This position is responsible for countless appointments to key positions in our government, proposes and oversees the implementation of policies and programs, acts as the country's commander-in-chief involving matters of national security, and models values for all. The president's national and global influence are significant, impactful, enormous, consequential. It cannot be underestimated how important it is for we Americans, particularly our eligible voting Americans, to be informed about our country's history, its founding values and principles, including America's foundational ideals affording liberty, equality, and justice for all. And that we choose leaders who likewise are informed about our country's history, founding values, and principles, and will support and forward them. And to be emphasized, it is extremely important that the prospective leader also has a strong and trustworthy moral character and has the ability to connect emotionally with those he or she is to lead, with the goal to listen to the issues, concerns, hopes, and fears of those being led, and offer a clear sense that they will be addressed in the pursuit of the common good. Our country has benefited from a number of past presidents who have demonstrated these foundational attributes at various times during their administrations. One example is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, our country's 32nd president, who served in this position from March 4, 1933 to April 12, 1945, having experienced ongoing and debilitating paralysis from polio since 1921. His presidency included the significant national and global challenges of the Great Depression and World War II. President Franklin Roosevelt was instrumental in putting into place the New Deal, which included many programs, including the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, and the Works Progress Administration, WPA, to combat unemployment and help the needy, leading our country out of the Great Depression. He signed into law the Social Security Act in 1935 to assist retirees and the most vulnerable in American society. He assessed the circumstances and needs of the Great Depression in this way, and I quote, "The test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those that have much. It is whether we provide enough for those that have too little." He also was instrumental in ending World War II while saving democracy, establishing the United Nations to promote positive global relations among countries, and the establishment of the GI Bill to provide educational benefits to veterans. In February of 1943, FDR stated to the nation that, and I will quote, "We have faith that future generations will know here in the middle of the 20th century, there came a time when men of goodwill found a way to unite and produce and fight to destroy the forces of ignorance and intolerance and slavery and war." President Roosevelt had the ability to identify solutions to real problems and bring people together to share a common purpose to address those problems. He clearly understood, supported, and forwarded the country's history and core purposes, values, and principles. And he understood and addressed people's issues, concerns, and fears, and provided hope and inspiration and exemplified strong moral character, courage, active listening, and the ability to emotionally connect with people in the process. His fireside chats were a comforting trademark of his presidency to the nation. In one of those fireside chats in April of 1938, he shared, and I quote, "The only sure bulwark of continuing liberty is a government strong enough to protect the interests of the people, and a people strong enough and well enough informed to maintain its sovereign control over its government." President Roosevelt clearly was an effective leader. As we have learned over time, effective leadership clearly does matter. Leaders affect our daily lives. Consequently, it is critical to select leaders with the right attributes and qualities. Selecting a leader is work, and it's extremely important and necessary work. This is not a responsibility to dismiss or to take lightly. It is critical for all of us to take this work on, to be responsible member citizens. So, when selecting your next leader, whether for a social group, a civic organization, or at the state or national level, be informed. Make sure the prospective leader understands and supports your organization's history, and purposes, and underlying foundational values and principles. And most critically, that he or she has a strong and trustworthy moral character, demonstrates courage, will actively listen to your group's issues, concerns, hopes, and fears, and can connect emotionally to support and forward needed and appropriate responses to address these. The work of an informed member citizen selecting a leader requires time and commitment, both of which are essential. Toward taking this work on, this important work, I will strongly recommend 5 must-do actions. First, read about and understand the history of your organization. Second, meet personally as possible with prospective leaders to get to know them. Third, read in more detail the qualifications and past experience of prospective leaders. Fourth, attend meetings to understand issues and see prospective leaders in action. And very importantly, fifth, be involved in the formal selection process. Vote. Commit early in the selection process to these recommendations and give yourself a realistic time frame to complete this important preparation work for selecting your next leader. In closing, I will emphasize that selecting a leader is important and necessary work, as they do, indeed, affect our daily lives. I strongly encourage you to actively take this work on, and I wish you much success in choosing your next leader. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for an impactful talk that demonstrated a passionate call to action. Now let's take a look at David's takeaways. That a speaker must clearly describe an issue and the actions necessary to address it. The recommended actions must be readily achievable for the target audience, and the audience must be motivated that the issue is critical to them and the actions recommended are necessary to address it. Again, thank you, David, and please put any questions you have for David in the Q&A, and we'll get to them right now. At this time, let's take a few minutes for questions and answers. Marie O'Neill will coordinate this portion of the meeting. Thank you, Marie.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, everyone who has chosen to spend your Saturday with us, wherever you are. It could be morning, afternoon, or even in the middle of the night. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions. And as Nancy said, if you have a question that you would like one of us to answer, or even a general question, please put it in the Q&A. I will see it and answer it. Well, we'll all answer it. The first question that came through is for Dawn. Dawn, how do you know which prop to choose?
That could be a challenge. First thing I look at is this is a really basic thing, is I look at the size of the audience. If I'm speaking to 400 people, then like this might be too small a prop to use, right? So the prop size should match the audience size. So that's like one of the first things. And then depending on what the message is or what I want to convey, sometimes it lends itself very well to a particular prop. For example, when I was talking about the 5 methods of adult learning, because there was 5 of them, I immediately thought of a hand, but I was able to use that theme about, puns some dad jokes. I apologize. Some dad jokes too, regarding hands and palm and, you gotta, high five this or whatever. So when I created this, it just seemed to go along with the theme too, what I was talking about. So I guess the first thing I would do is I would look at what particular prop size would be appropriate, because that could eliminate a lot of potential prop, that you might use. Then I would look at, okay, what's the main theme I'm looking at? And is there anything I can do that would lend itself well to it? For my previous position with a lot of safety oriented talks that either I gave or my staff gave, a personal story was one of the most effective ways that people could communicate safety information in a digestible, understandable, and impactful way. So I don't know if I'm sure if I answered the question. So I'd look at the size of the audience, I'd look at what the message is going to be, and then I'd look at what would be the best way to kind of jumpstart that presentation with whatever it is that I'm going to be talking about. And depending on what that message is and what the audience, who the audience is going to be, it usually points me in the direction of one of those 7 methods that we talked about.
All right. Thank you, Don. I hope that answers the question. The next question is for me, and it says, Marie, thank you. Would you suggest starting a speech with what you want the audience to take away, what you want the audience to walk away with? And can you repeat the other question to ask ourselves to shift into service mode? And I'm going to ask Don to help me with this one, with the first part, because in my view, if you're going to start your talk with what you want the audience to walk away with, you really do need to word it in the right way. You don't want to say, I want, by the end of this talk, you're going to take away this. I wouldn't start the talk that way, because as Don said, you only have 7 seconds to capture the audience's attention. Don, would you add to that?
Yeah, I understand what the question's asking, and I think I would focus on getting the audience's attention first with one of the techniques I mentioned, one of those 7 tips. And then once you've got the audience's attention, because whatever you use, whatever those tips are that you're going to use, it's germane to the topic. And then I think then you can kind of slide into, like, for example, I'll just use myself example. I often share my first and worst presentation ever story. So I don't start with saying you will walk away with knowing how to give a good presentation and you'll knock them dead and they'll be loving to hear you speak and all that. I don't, I share the opposite. I share what happens when you crash and burn and you just want to open up a hole and dive in. And by doing it that way, then when I say, okay, so what are some ways we can avoid that feeling or that situation, then it dovetails a little nicer. So I would actually get the audience's attention first with one of the techniques, and then I would, if you've done a good job of selecting your opening, then it lends itself well to then talking about, diving into how you want to solve their problem or what they're going to walk away with. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Don. And in answer to the second question that you had, the question that you would ask yourself, the second question you would ask yourself is, what specific value, insight, or inspiration am I bringing to them? Because that is going to really help you take the attention off yourself and put it back onto the audience. If that answered your question, or if you have another question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A.
Marie?
Yes.
I had a little tag on for that, because if I understand the question, which is a valid one, I think, in fact, we worked on that as a group here because Nancy presented our themes right off immediately at introducing us. And then she gave the takeaways that we each created, our bullet points, meaning that the introduction led a canvas of what you were going to experience, such as an immediate introduction, within the 7 seconds, you could say, as Dawn is talking about, or and to answer this question, rather than with the final takeaways that built through with procedures or more of a focus. I hope that illustrates.
Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Sue. The next question is for Tony. The viewer says, I am extremely shy and have difficulty with having even one-on-one conversations. Do you have any suggestions for someone like me to use your tools?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime that you're shy or you're practicing a new skill, you're trying something on for size, you don't know how it's going to work, start small. Really, start small. With conversation, I don't know if it's a cliche or not, but I've seen it a lot, is start with people who are just kind of required to talk to you. Okay. So if you're buying something at a store, you're working with a clerk, you're working with somebody who's checking you out, you're going to a movie, you're buying a ticket, you're doing something. This person is required to talk to you. And so having a little give and take, a little back and forth, is something that's going to happen naturally in that situation. So start small, start low stake, build that muscle because it really is something that you need to practice. And, I find that I get really, and this speaks to what you talked about, Marie, is when you're focused on yourself, when you're focused on, oh, my internal state, how am I feeling? Am I feeling nervous? Is everything going okay? You get really self-conscious, then things don't flow as well as you would want them to. So really focusing on the other person, focusing on their experience and how they're feeling. How's your day going? How's that make you feel? What is your experience been in this situation? You really start to shed those feelings and just practice. Just practice, practice, practice.
Perfect. Thank you, Tony. The next question that we have is for Leslie. I like this. So the person says, Leslie, did you wash your hands though? She said, thank you for painting funny visuals. Happy Harvest Moon. I like that. There's another question here for you, Leslie, though, too. And it is, I understand that you can tap on any part of the body, including your feet and your ears. What is your opinion on that? Would that work?
Excuse me, the meridians run through the whole body. And yes, there are meridians in the ears and on the bottom of your feet. An acupuncturist would know more about what the meridians in the ears would connect with in your body. I mean, what you could use them for, what spots to use. I do not know. I'm not an acupuncturist. And on the feet is the same thing. There are spots on the feet. And I know a little bit more about that, but not enough to be intelligent about it. And acupressurists are the ones that work on the feet and use those meridian points in the feet to affect different parts of the body. Yes, the short answer is yes, you could do that. I just don't know how to do it because those are not my expertise.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. The next question is for Sue. And Sue, the questioner says, why is it so important to connect the heart with the head when giving a talk?
Thank you, Marie. Heart and head, they both start with H. And they're very close, HEA. And that means, okay, the heart, our feelings regulate our manifestation. That law of attraction that you actually used in, or actually maybe it was Leslie, it was brought up as one of the possible tools that a person might use. When it first came out 10, 15, 20, 30 years, whenever it was, with Canfield, it was think, put the big check on your ceiling and get your $1 million, et cetera, think and you shall achieve. And the mantra, I repeat. It has been discovered, or perhaps not discovered, but really recognized, that how we feel is why we get these confused results. We want, yet it's not happening, or we get something that's contrary. It's because perhaps we're sabotaging ourselves through our feelings. Yes, we feel confident, but inside, perhaps we're really feeding that fear, perhaps because we're thinking about ourselves more than thinking about the other person, just to tie in some of these tips that we've been talking about. The heart, just like, was it not Adler, Amour, Dr. Amour stated, has the nerves. It is a bigger brain than our brain, and it feeds all these feelings. Just as though the confidence as we walk in and how we present ourselves, all these are subtle considerations of the strength of how we're feeling translates. I'm thinking of a takeaway here, and that is that yes, they're partners in everything. And if we ignore, you can turn your coffee pot on by simple instructions, but you can't get your heart percolating unless you talk to your soul. And your soul involves, regardless of how you talk about that might be a little woo-woo, but I trust not. It matters.
Thank you, Sue. I would also, venture to say that when your heart is involved, your talk really stands out. People will feel that.
Absolutely.
There is another message here for you, Sue, and it says, thank you, Sue, for the additional insight. That was helpful. This next question actually is for Jen. Jen says, I'd like to add humor to my talks, so thank you for the tips that you gave. The question is, how do I know what humor to actually use and what will actually work before I give it to an audience? There's also a second question here where she says, how do I make sure that my humor isn't offensive to someone in the audience? So how do I make sure my humor isn't offensive to the audience? And how do I know if the humor that I am using is actually going to work before I deliver it? And this is
for
Jen.
that question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are great questions. First, I would suggest joining a group like this and testing your anecdote or your humor. And the reason why I focused on self-deprecating is because I felt like that would be the safest form of humor, since humor is very subjective. And the other piece would be to try to get a good idea of the makeup of your audience. So they say that in conversation, we should avoid topics of politics, religion, and I think there was a third one. So
Sex.
maybe follow those, avoid those kind of topics unless it's related personally to yourself and you feel you've tested it out on your friends and family in a, a close practice group like this one, and you can get feedback. And I would also look at the news and see what topics are controversial, and I would stay away from those.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. All right, David, here there is a question for you, and it's about the call to action. And this person says they have difficulty creating clear call to actions. Is it possible for call to actions to be given in a subtle way, or does it always have to be explicit?
Thank you for the question. I really think that the call to action does need to be explicit. What is it that you want your audience to do? What's the purpose of your talk, and what actions or takeaways are you looking for from your audience? And so I do think that it needs to be clear, concise, actionable, and the call to action needs to give recommendations that the audience you're speaking to can deliver on. And so I would, answer by saying it should be explicit, and there should be clear steps for the audience to take that audience can deliver upon. That would be important. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. This question is for, I'm sorry, Sue, you have your hand?
Just a thought here as far as call to action and also how to learn humor, that combining both Jennifer's and David's. Toastmasters. I think we all came from Toastmasters, but there's clubs everywhere. They're both virtual and online. Is another outlet. Perhaps that could help you among the many groups. They're not always, anyway, it's just
That's true. That is true.
Idea.
Thank you, Sue. The next question is, and this is a general question for anyone who wants to answer it. How can you use interesting stories to illustrate the core leadership attributes? How can you use interesting stories to illustrate the core leadership attributes? So who would like to answer that question?
I would be happy to start with that, given, my talk was about leadership. And as you heard, what I tried to do in terms of demonstrating leadership attributes, I tried to convey stories about Franklin Delano Roosevelt to give examples of what he did during his administration in terms of some of the leadership attributes and qualities that I believe to be important. So that in that talk was a way of providing stories, descriptions that would be an example for the person asking the question. And I'm sure that others have other examples as well, but the talk itself had several examples, I think.
Perfect. Thank you. And yes, Tony, go right ahead.
Yeah, I gave a talk many years ago. I called it Bernie and Bonnie. And it contrasted two leaders in my life up to that point. One was Bonnie, who was a very autocratic leader who liked to tell people what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And also Bernie Katz was a friend of mine. He was an economics professor. And we used to hang out in a cafe in San Francisco and drink coffee and have
Hmm.
deep conversations about deep topics. And each one of them taught me about leadership in a very different way. And I use those two contrasting stories, the authoritarian leader and the more, the more heart-centered leader, to use a Sioux term, and how those two people contrasted. So you can use negative examples and you can use positive examples. They'll all kind of point to the item that you're trying to teach people.
Oh, that's perfect. Thank you. Anyone? Oh, yes, Leslie.
Suggestion on stories suggestion from Craig Valentine to keep a log of stories. Just as you come across an interesting story, you may not have a purpose for it right at that moment, but write it down, put it under some category that you think might use in the future. And then when you need a story, you go through your catalog of stories and you can pick one up that would apply to whatever you're talking about at the time. And that way, the interesting stories we come across in our daily lives, and we usually forget about them. But if you have them logged in in some fashion, then you can go look and you have access to stories that you would probably forget.
Absolutely. Yes. Sue.
Such great tips. As you're speaking, I was trying to figure what would be a story. I remember a childhood story way back about the sun and the moon. And there's somebody walking down the path, and the wind says to the sun, I can make him take his jacket off. And anyway, they argue. So the wind blows and blows and blows. And of course, the man huddles closer. The sun beats and beats and beats his rays, and the man takes his jacket off. You could, in a very vague way, or not vague, but it's leadership, and it's tuning into the needs and the practicality of what the situation requires. Even in other words, your story can be something that's a fairy, Hansel and Gretel, whatever.
All right. Thank you. Typically, a lot of times what I do is I will, of course, use stories from my life or from people that I know, of course, changing the names. The other thing is we're constantly on social media and running across stories. We hear stories all the time. And, I like the idea of keeping a log of the stories. I don't. What typically happens is the story comes to mind as I am speaking with someone.
Yeah.
And that's when I bring the story up. It's an automatic thing, but it means that you do need to stay curious and with life, with people, and ask questions, read it. Even the TV shows that you watch, there are many stories there, of course. And so you could use something from there. All right. I don't see any more questions here. So what I will do, and thank you everyone for putting your questions in the Q&A for us. We really appreciate it. I am turning it back over to you, Nancy.
Great. Thank you, Marie. In closing, I'd like to thank all of you for spending part of your Saturday with us. We hope you picked up some new ideas to elevate your speaking skills and to allow you to get your message out in all the ways that you strive for. If some of these messages resonated with you, please consider joining Wine Country Speakers. We meet once a month for 3 hours on Saturday mornings, generally the third Saturday of each month. Drop us a note using our Wine Country Speaker website. The recording, as David mentioned, will be available. The whole session was recorded, and the webinar will be available on our website within several days. Again, from all members of Wine Country Speakers, we thank you for joining us on this webinar today. Have a great weekend.